So we all love a good 8, 9, 10 out of 10 game, right? I'm talking about the heavy hitters here, like Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, Ocarina of Time, or Portal 2. You get the idea, and if you don't, then that's too bad, I'm moving on, so please try to keep up next time. But you know what I sometimes love more than a 10 out of 10 game? A nice 7 out of 10 game. Type of game that gets a bit of buzz for a week, maybe 2, if it's good, then disappears only to be brought up in a video, just like the one you're watching now. I hear you questioning why I like a 7 out of 10 game more than a 10 out of 10 at times. The rating is lower, and therefore it's bad, right?
Wrong.
And it's opinions like this that stop us getting more of them, which is a crime in my eyes. So I'm making this video to show the difference between a good and a bad one, as well as maybe get some people to try out some hidden gems. Now before we can look into some great 7 out of 10 games, we need to understand what a 7 out of 10 game actually is. And yes, I know it can be defined easily in one sentence. It's a game that the reviewers in public rate a 7 out of 10 upon release. Shut it, smart. A 7 out of 10 game is the type of game that you enjoy and have some fun with it, but it doesn't exactly change your worldview, but it does allow you to shut your brain off for a week and have some fun. Many call these mid, and I hate that because mid game in my mind is mediocre, and that's what I'm talking about 5 out of 10s. But a 7 out of 10 game is one that you finish, and you might recommend to your friends once or twice, but you won't rave about it forever. It'll be like, if it comes up in conversation, or I just played this, it surprised me. It's not one that you're going to base your personality on, you know? And you'll move on to the next game pretty quickly, and maybe you come back to it in a few years because your last memory of it is that it was quite fun. Now obviously 7 out of 10 game isn't perfect. It'd be a 10 out of 10 if it was. But it does usually excel in at least one thing, and 9 times out of 10 it's the gameplay. The story and characters are usually an afterthought, but the gameplay is where it stands out. A few examples of these would be games like Sleeping Dogs or say Lollipop Chainsaw. It isn't to say these two game stories are bad, but they're clearly not the main focus. But there is also something very unique when it comes to a 7 out of 10, and that's that there are two different types of a 7 out of 10, and that's the good or unique ones, and the bad, which usually means generic ones. So let's have a quick look at a few of each type. Just a quick side note. I notice I've said 7 out of 10 a lot in this script, and that's expected. But if you want to have some extra fun with this one, take a shot of every time I say it. Now I won't because I have to record the audio, but do it on my behalf.
I said, God help me.
Anyway, now as I said earlier, a bad 7 out of 10 game tends to be unoriginal, bland, or generic. But at its core, it's still got a semblance of fun. And there's one company that has mastered this type of game. And can you guess which one that is? It's Ubisoft. Congratulations if you got that correct. You get a free car or a free holiday. What do game shows offer nowadays? I don't watch them. I'm not 70 or in a care home. Anyway, as I was saying, Ubisoft used to make games that get nominated for Game of the Year. Look at Assassin's Creed 2 or Far Cry 3. And they do occasionally get a diamond in the rough when they try. Just look at Assassin's Creed Origins and Mario plus Rabbids. But on average, Ubisoft has mastered the art of selling you a kinda meh or bad 7 out of 10 game with the likes of Far Cry 4, 5 and 6 or Assassin's Creed Unity, Syndicate, Odyssey, Valhalla, Mirage and Shadows, for example. And my god, I did not realize how many games that was until I started reading them out. Now these games aren't objectively bad, and it's all just opinion after all. But to me, they all just kind of come off as kind of boring now. Like, if you told me to play any of these games I mentioned, I'd have fun with it. But it would end quickly, and why, I hear you ask? The gameplay systems have not changed or evolved once. It gets boring. Assassin's Creed is the biggest culprit of this. For 10 years, they just did the same game yearly, and they realized they needed to change, so for Origins, they took 3 years off, they came back with an RPG, and it was really good. Can you guess what AC did after changing how the combat worked, the armor, how the entire game functioned? Can you take a guess what they did? And why is it this AC? I meant Assassin's Creed. Why are you putting Animal Crossing? Jesus, you cannot get good help around these days. Anyway, what Assassin's Creed did was they went back to yearly releases, more or less. You had Odyssey, Valhalla, Mirage and Shadows, as I mentioned earlier, all using pretty much the same gameplay systems, and the only one that really did a noticeable change in my eyes, from what I can tell, is Valhalla. The gameplay started to resemble some of the older stuff, the stuff that people liked, but the issue was that the world was too big and the story was too long, so everyone kind of lost interest when playing it. But let's move on from Assassin's Creed, because I used to love that series, and that kind of hurts to rip into it a lot. So let's have a look at Far Cry, because it's got a very similar story.
What the definition of insanity is.
So Far Cry 3 and Blood Dragon, let's please not forget Blood Dragon, it's one of the best things that Ubisoft have done. Why you haven't done more for it, I don't know. But these games were incredible. They put Far Cry on the map. Also 3, but I need to include Blood Dragon more. But the issue Far Cry has, like AC, is it takes 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Far Cry 4 has a beautiful world, great villain and fun gameplay decisions, but the protagonist kinda sucks. The story wasn't very memorable outside of its opening hours, and the decision making mechanic they brought in is okay, but neither character is really likable, so it can suck at times. So Far Cry 5 goes for a more memorable story, whole new location, with it being in America, something people have asked for a while, some great villains and better characters. Now, they have got better characters, but most of them were the villains, so I'm just gonna cut them some slack on that. But its biggest flaw, the thing that holds it back from being an 8 out of 10, they saw that no one cared about RJ from Far Cry 4 due to his lack of character, so this time the protagonist is silent. There isn't even a good explanation for this, he just doesn't say anything. Which is ridiculous because he's like deputy of the police force and he's just not saying anything? I think he's like Black Noir or something. Now Far Cry 6 isn't one that I can really say much on due to not playing it, but my understanding is the characters are even less likable than 4 and just a bunch of stereotypes. Gameplay has gone significantly boring due to it still not changing, and when it does, it's not for the best. And the only thing really working for it is that it's got Giancarlo Esposito as the villain, but that's not really saying anything because when he's the villain, it's kind of guaranteed to get you at least one extra point. Now I know I spend a lot of time ripping into Ubisoft games, and unfortunately this section was kind of made for them. Don't get me wrong, they can make great games like all of the Assassin's Creeds from 1 all the way up to Rogue and Origins, Mario plus Rabbids or Far Cry 3 plus Blood Dragon, but it just isn't as common nowadays. But tell you what, Ubisoft, if you bring back Rayman in a new game, not a remake or remaster, if you just bring back Rayman, and for the love of God, please not Rayman 2 again, then all is forgiven, okay? Now, for every Ubisoft, there is a Suda51.
What do you mean by that?
Well, where the games listed before never really change or try something new, Suda51 goes out of his way to make changes that seem kind of crazy, but also kind of work. Now, for the most part, the story is going to be pretty meh because it just serves as a backdrop, and the gameplay is going to feel a bit clunky, but my god do these games have confidence. It's full of hype moments, fun dialogue and characters, and a banging soundtrack for the most part, and most importantly they always try something new, like I said. Now I haven't played many Suda51 games, only really No More Heroes and Lollipop Chainsaw. But hey, cut me some slack. For Lollipop Chainsaw I played the original before the remaster came out because, you know, it didn't have the full soundtrack, but I played the original first, okay? Great game. And I've played all 3 No More Heroes games, plus Travis Strikes Again, so I have some credibility on those games at least. His other games are expensive, alright? Let it be. But either way, his games will have you laughing the whole way through. They're all like 10 hours long, so they don't overstay their welcome, and they just kind of allow you to sit back and turn your brain off and have some fun. Does the gameplay changes always land? Honestly, not always. I remember really not liking the top 10 bits of Lollipop Chainsaw, and the part-time job system with No More Heroes does get older after a while, and I know the part-time job system is like half of the gameplay, but it gets old halfway through on every single one of the games, so, you know, that could do a little bit of change, I guess. But I will always respect when a dev tries something new. Now, that doesn't mean that every 7 out of 10 game has to try and do something crazy, like completely change the gameplay for a bit, but they do need to have something new or fresh. The first couple of games that come to mind is something like Deathloop. The gameplay is basically just Dishonored with guns, but the story and whole gimmick of time looping and planning your route to each target is really fun, because there's so many different ways you can go about it, and you can hit them in so many different ways, you know. You can go for a different target each time. It's really cool how it's done, and I heard it get a lot of, you know, flack when it came out. I thought it was a great game, personally. Well, you have something like The Order 1886. The gameplay is pretty basic cover shooting that you'd see in, like, say, Uncharted or Gears of War, but the story is so unique with it being set in an alternative history version of London, where the Knights of the Round are still about fighting werewolves and lichens. I don't remember what they were or what it was called, but it was cool. It kind of felt like old school Assassin's Creed when you met Leonardo da Vinci for the first time, and like later on he goes and gives you a hidden blade and turns out he helps the assassins. But this time we have Nikola Tesla working in an underground lab making rail guns for you out of electricity. Well, ignore the fact that, you know, they're using massive lanterns and not flashlights, even though they have radios and rail guns and blimps. But you know what? Let's not look too far into it. It was a great game. It was awesome. Sony, please, for the love of God, give me a sequel. The ending has got such a massive cliffhanger. I know it has problems. I know review-wise it flopped, but please just give it one more chance, I beg you. Just give me a DLC or something at this point. But if you want to look back further than, say, the PS4 or 5 era, then you have the likes of The Force Unleashed on the PS3. The combat isn't incredible. Like, it's fun, but the worst part is when you have to refight bosses all the time. But the story? Absolutely brilliant. Starkiller being a secret apprentice of Vader when he was in his prime, with the whole goal of you two taking down the Emperor and ruling the galaxy in his place. Incredible. And honestly, its best feature was how cool using the Force was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the first time the player had this much control of the Force. It was so cool to fling a droid out the window, smash the window when it was in space, and watching all the stormtroopers going flying out the window while holding onto the wall or the railings for dear life. Oh my god, it was hilarious, and it was so much fun to do. And oh my god, I might have a problem. I think I need to go see therapy. And on a last note, for The Force Unleashed, Disney, stop being cowards. Bring back Starkiller. You keep bringing in Sam Witwer for all the other roles in the animated shows. Just let Starkiller come back, you cowards. Just bring him back. It doesn't need to be that difficult. Alright. So you get the idea on what a good or a bad 7 out of 10 game is, and for the most part it comes down to opinions. But they all have the same basic ideas behind them. Many may say that they only want 10 out of 10s because games are expensive now and they don't have as much time to play them, due to the everyday life problems. And believe me, I hear that. But in my opinion, I would rather a 7 out of 10 game that tries something new than a 10 out of 10 game that plays it safe and looks and does all the same things as every other game on the market at the moment. But that's just my opinion, personally. Now, I do hope that you enjoyed this video. I release videos every 2 weeks on a Friday. So if you want to keep up to date with the content, then hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you just like this one video, maybe hit the like button. Tell me some 7 out of 10 games you love in the comments.